Welcome back to Bride Price, a culture or the new slavery. In this fourth episode of a 5-part documentary that will be aired weekly, MIFUMI brings you exclusive footage of this very emotive issue that captures the views of extraordinary people who have experiences of bride price and of those who have championed its reform going way back to the first National Commission on the Status of Women held in 1965, which produced the Kalema Report on Women's Rights. So, why is the practice of bride price so difficult to tackle? Why are cultural leaders, religious leaders, and the government all so afraid of tackling bride price? What is the main challenge and obstacles associated with changing the practice of bride price?
Actually, I was not very happy because of that petition, because women, what they are facing there in the village is too much. Yeah, and like urban people, they don't understand about that. They think that what is happening in urban, it's what is happening in the villages. But it differs. Women are suffering silence.
And Justice Maitum said, it's a crucifix for women. What more do these judges want to hear? You know, if they're not in touch with what's on the ground, let them go and learn what's happening to the people. You know, these people, this bride price culture does not affect people in Kampala who can afford to give as many gifts as they want, who don't even care about the refund. But it needs leadership to understand what is happening to people on the ground. Is it the case that even the judges fear to tackle culture? Is culture above the Constitution, or is it simply a question of women's equality?
What I'm a bit surprised about is the fact that judges who are supposed to be defending this country and revisiting this constitution are actually not making decisions that are supposed to protect their people. Yeah? But I would advise all these judges who made a ruling, especially the female judges, because this thing affects women most. In fact, I'm surprised that the female judges who were seated in that panel came to such a decision that bride price is constitutional, or the practice in itself should continue.
And there are two issues. One, they do not identify with these women we are trying to protect. They are not clear of what's happening on the ground. They don't know the problems associated with bride price, and they fear to attack culture.
They need to go to the ground. Let them go to the ground and talk to the people, because a majority of the people in this country are living under the poverty line. It's not enough for a few judges to sit here in their offices here and make such a decision without making adequate consultation. However, on a positive note, we would not be seated here together if we did not have a national debate going on across the country. This ruling, actually, for MIFUMI, it is a victory. Why? Because we have a national debate. People have begun debating about this thing, and people are appreciating that indeed it's a problem. We have men in Palisa, in Soroti, who are busy forcing, because they say, I married you for such and such number of cows. And you can't believe me, that gentleman, today as I talk, Action Aid built for the woman a house. He's claiming for that house on the grounds that he paid bride price and he needs a refund of bride price since the marriage has collapsed.
This whole judgment has been a mockery on anybody trying to protect women and trying to develop our society.
The freedom of choice that the Constitutional Court is highlighting, that women are free to choose the kind of marriage they want to enter into, doesn't apply.
Because you see, the Constitution says that the people who marry should be the people who have consented. But here is a situation where the people who take bride price are the parents of the bride, and therefore we thought that the judges should find that there's a lack of consent in this matter.
I was dismayed by that ruling, but I talked to some of the judges involved. They said we should have consulted the whole country It is not the same. What is happening in the north and the east may not be the same elsewhere. For I know in Uganda, for instance, they don't demand bride price. But during Kwanjula now, it costs a lot of money to have that Kwanjula. And thank God it is not refundable. But in the north and the east, the problem of paying bride price is a real problem.
What do the religious leaders have to say?
I think this is really exploitation of women. If a law is held just because of the way it looks at a woman, why should the same law not be looked at the evils it does to women? For instance, when a bride price has not been paid, the woman will not be buried customarily. They will demand that bride price be paid. Of what good, of what value is such a law? And if we're only looking at its cherishing of women as a spring of life, then it's only exploiting the women. The women should be looked at in equality, their dignity upheld, their integrity looked at, and as far as Christians are concerned, in their status as an image of God.
I think in my own personal view, the judges need to go back to analyze the benefits of amicable agreement between the two families where the two children are intending to make a home before having rational judgment. Because if they looked at the deep down the community, you know, there are people who believe that culture, that's our culture, they just talk like that. Culture is good. But like me, I'm an Etesot. There was a culture where a woman maybe could be bathed and then could move partially naked. Those days, that culture has been removed. I thank Etesot for that. That one was one of the bad culture. There was another culture of women not eating chicken. That has stopped. It was a bad culture. If we continue with that, then we would realize our women suffering from kwashiorkor, children malnourished, that when a woman is pregnant, she's not supposed to eat intestines, internal organs. And these are rich foodstuffs in what? For the growth of the fetus. So I think the judges should also endeavor to find out what is law on the ground without looking at the sympathetic faces of the people who want just a vote for gaining their argument. So the judgment which was made as a person needs revisiting.
My view is that they got it wrong this time because there is a very big correlation between the two, and there is a problem with the way the judges did their thing, and I would beg that they do more research and become more humane so that they don't live in that sort of utopian world, because it's very clear, it's obvious that there's a relationship between the two, and if it was possible, maybe there would be either an appeal and getting another way of doing this so that we can even embark on sensitization so that the people know that we can't continue living in such a world.
It's such a shame, first of all, I must say, that they voted against this thing, because bride price, as we all know, has been regulated years ago in Buganda. It's a token of appreciation as we speak now. And what the eastern part of this country, or what Uganda has been asking for, is to have this practice taken across the country. So my question to those judges is, on what grounds do they stand to say that one part of this country can practice a bride price as a token of appreciation, while the rest of the country continues to practice it as the sale of women, and many times young women, very young women, I'm talking about 12 and 13-year-olds.
These women can have recourse to the law. They can go to the police and the courts. These are kangaroo courts operating. In the villages, you're taken to a sub-county court. It happened to my uncle and his bride. They were jailed because after 15 years, a man surfaced and said, "This is my wife, refund my cows, you're staying with my wife." That girl was married to the man at the age of about 15. After years of mistreatment, she ran away and stayed home for about 15 years. Then she met my uncle and they started living together, and he suddenly came up and said, I want my cows back. You know, and they were thrown into a county jail because this is an agreement. It's an agreement and it's written down. You sign that I'm entering into this marriage with your daughter, but if she leaves, you must refund my cows.
I was arrested by the Askaris from Nabioga sub-county. They were about 2. It was evening time. Then we were taken together with my wife here, Plumera. Whereabout we stayed about 3 days. I was put there in a custody in another room. She was also put in another room. She had paid 1 cow and 2 goats, and was claiming for the whole thing to be paid at once, which I had not. I didn't have that at the moment. Then I sold a piece of my land. I gave them about 150,000 shillings. Then they said I was still to pay back 1 cow and 2 goats, which I have not paid up to now, and they are still claiming. They wanted me to pay them 2 cows and 3 goats.
You know, so these things are enforced. So the judges cannot say women should have recourse to the laws, because magistrates misapply the law. They're going against the Constitution. Kangaroo courts, sub-county courts, put these old men, parents who cannot pay bride price, into jail, because that is all they know. But if the Constitution could be changed from the top, yeah, it will get down to the bottom. But if the top does not give that message, a fish rots from the head. If the top, these constitutional courts, do not give that message, most of our women, most of our people are poor. They live in the villages. The only thing they know is culture. And if culture is culture, it is right. It is these judges to say, no, if culture is oppressive, it cannot be defended. Now, what the judges said, if you buy into a custom, you must abide by its demands. Well, how are these women buying into a custom that refuses to recognize their contribution in marriage, so that even when the man is at fault and chases her away, or is the one responsible for the breakdown of the marriage, he still wants his refund? Who is meant to keep who in check, culture or the law? The law, the Constitution is the supreme law of the country. Anything that is inconsistent with the Constitution is null and void. This includes culture.
That ruling cannot be acceptable, right? That ruling is saying that we as human beings, we as Ugandans, are happy to take over 50% of our population and leave them behind. We are happy to treat them as lesser human beings as the male species, right? So it has to be recalled. They have to remit. We must appeal against the decision, and these judges need to see the examples for themselves. We can't carry on like this. We can't talk about human rights, pretend to talk about human rights, while we leave half of the population behind us. Enough is enough.
The judges who ruled disfavorably on this petition ignored at least three important things. First, that bride price is conditional as it is now, right down to contracts that are written and signed involving conditional payment, conditional refund, and sort of creating the conditions for inequality in the marriage. That was one thing. The second thing that was ignored is how significant this problem is. I think many people are out of touch with the reality of the majority of people in this country, more than 70%, who live in the rural areas and have to find land to sell, have to be dispossessed, have to try and find bride price to refund before they live an abusive marriage. I think that was lost. And a third issue is the opportunity to exercise this leadership, to bridge this gap, bring bride price and all these customs, which we think are actually oppressive social practices, in line with the Constitution, or, if failing that, restore it to what it originally was.
Don't forget to catch this controversial issue Sunday at 4:30 p.m. Brought to you by MIFUMI and showing exclusively on NTV.